Welcome to Leading for Wellness. I'm Liesl Bernard, CEO of Cologne Executive Search and Leading for Wellness events. Each week, we dive into the journeys of visionary wellness entrepreneurs, uncovering their secrets to success. Get ready for insightful conversations that will inspire you to elevate your business and prioritize your well-being. Let's dive in. Today's guest is Joel Kocher, a successful former tech executive that helped build Dell from a startup to a Fortune 500 powerhouse. After a short stint in retirement, Joel found his new purpose and founded Human, the fastest growing company behind science-backed nitric oxide supplements. Joel, welcome to the Leading for Wellness podcast. I'm very excited to have you on the show today and to get into our conversation.
Great. Well, I'm equally as, if not more excited. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So I want to start out by saying you've had such an incredible, remarkable career in tech.
Thank you.
Being the number 2 employee at Dell and helping, Michael Dell build that company from 100 million to, a Fortune 500 company, and then doing it again with a couple of other tech companies before you got into the nutraceutical industry. So tell me a little bit, your perspective on bringing all that experience to the nutraceutical space. That really sets you apart in launching Human.
That's a great question. Being president of Dell Computer during what I like to call the formative years, some people call it the rocket ship years, was like being in a time machine. I think the year before I joined the company, it was 60 million in revenue. Less than 5 years later, we're Fortune 500. So fastest growth company in history up to that point in time. So what you tend to, I think, happens during an ascent like that is you're cycled through all of these different stages of growth and evolution as a company, and you have to adjust at Mach 12. And you have to keep adjusting. I mean, you're literally, when you think about that growth rate, thousands and thousands of %, right? As a leader, you've got to make adjustments every single day and up-level yourself every single day. So I think that experience in some ways was so unique yet so valuable because it literally was a time machine and put me into a situation of being uncomfortable almost every day.
So you retired very early, right, at 49, and I think you, from what I've learned about you, you didn't feel like you had a sense of purpose, even though you had multiple hobbies that you pursued, in your retirement. And so what brought you out of retirement, and what was that aha moment when you found Human?
Well, first, let me just speak to retirement. You can't change the world in retirement. That's the biggest learning that I had. And I'm a mission sort of guy. And listen, I had, as you made reference to, I had plenty of hobbies. That was not the problem. But you just can't change the world. We're making one, we're making one through line through life, and you got to make it count on every dimension. So I tried everything. I tried consulting. I tried CEO coaching. I tried investing, and none of them were working. And just pure serendipity. I get a call from a friend, says, look, University of Texas Health Sciences hired a Nobel Prize winner to initiate a discovery program in 2003 around the most important molecule in your cardiovascular system, nitric oxide. And over 7 years, they've developed a lot of know-how. They have intellectual property. They're looking for a commercial partner. You don't have anything going on. Why don't you come, take a listen? So I went. And 10 minutes, that's all it took. I knew that I had found my life's mission, not just my next mission, but my life's mission.
That's amazing. I think in so many ways, you think that having money or having that freedom to do nothing and just play all day,
Sure.
is something that we all strive for. But when you get there, you realize that it's really giving,
That's
and
right.
having a sense of purpose that gives life meaning, right? And that's such a great example of that. And, tell us about nitric oxide. They say it's the miracle molecule, right? But I think so many people don't even know what it is.
You have 60,000 miles or blood vessels in your body, give or take. You have about 36, 37, excuse me, 36, 37 trillion cells serviced by those 60,000 miles of blood vessels. There isn't a single function, not one, in the human body that's not enabled by those 60,000 miles of blood vessels. There's nothing more foundational to longevity or health span or, frankly, lifespan, because it's the number one killer of human beings in the world. We know that, cardiovascular issues, than this. That's why I was so excited when I first heard this story. I'd never heard of this. What is this? How can this be true? And then I very quickly understood this truly was a opportunity to change the trajectory of human health in the world. And
Yeah,
that's why I get so, why I'm so passionate about it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And nitric oxide, I've done some homework on it, just in preparing for this podcast, and it's
Yes,
a gas, right? So it's
it
not
is.
something you can actually really easily measure. But it's
So,
so important in so many factors in our health.
well, it's a gas, and I'll just
Hmm.
do a really quick explanation. So
Sure,
it's a
that'd be great.
gas. It's emitted from the linings of your blood vessels, which is called the endothelium, from the time you're a fetus, right? And it's what's called a signaling molecule, which is what it won the Nobel Prize for in 1998. And what it does is it signals the blood vessels to stay dilated, and it signals the interior linings of the blood vessels to stay smooth and Teflon-like. The wicked health problem is that as you age, like a lot of other things, right, your body's natural production of this gas hits a ski slope in your 40s, right? So in absentia of sufficient nitric oxide gas, not signaling your blood vessels to stay dilated, they constrict. Well, that's where high blood pressure comes from. And if you think about the linings of the blood vessels staying smooth and Teflon like, things don't stick to Teflon, do they?
Mm-mm.
Right. So those are just two of the most important things. And it does so many other things. It increases ATP production and increases VO2 max, which is, become, I think recently people are realizing, or at least physicians are realizing, that's a marker for health span. It does so many things in the human body. It just gets me excited every single morning when I go to work that today I can make a difference in someone's life.
Yeah, or save somebody's life for that matter, right?
Right.
So I tried the Superbeat pre-workout mix that I got at Expo West, and I'm an avid cyclist, and I tried it the first Saturday that I got back, and I beat my time by over 4 minutes going up Torrey Pines Hill, which is the hill that that I do every Saturday morning. And I
Sure.
was I was blown away on how I felt, and a 4 minute improvement on my time was pretty significant. So for myself that really worked. So
Well, of course it
pretty,
did.
yeah,
Of
yeah.
course it did. And here's why. Because you vasodilate your blood vessels, whether you're 60 or you're 20. You are increasing oxygen efficiency. You're increasing the flow of oxygen to the places you need it when you're working out. That's why over 2,000 teams, 2,000,
2,000. I thought it was only
professional and
200.
collegiate. No. That was 200 entities. But if you look, like, take the University of
Oh,
Texas,
total,
for
yeah.
example, right? They have 20 or 21 teams, right? Women's basketball, men's basketball, softball, baseball, that actually use a product. So the team count is over 2,000. So when you think about, if I'm you and I'm thinking about, okay, I see the clinical trial they've done on this product. It's amazing. You have a double-digit improvement in endurance. But to me, the badge is, when you look at it, if you have 2,000 professional and Division I collegiate teams using this product, if you are super serious, or even if you're casual, you're going to run 1 marathon a year, why would you not try it? So
Yeah.
thanks for trying it.
Oh, I
Thanks
love
for
it.
trying it.
I'm hooked. So I
Great.
take it before every workout now.
Great.
So tell me about your partnership with the University of Texas, speaking about athletes.
Well, kind of contextually talking about the industry or making reference to the industry, one of the things I looked at very carefully before I baked the strategy of this company was that this industry is light on science, way too light for products that are literally being taken primarily for health reasons and at the very least are being ingested by human beings. So we weren't only backed by science, we were born in science, and we were born out of the University of Texas system. And that's been a through line for the company. We've done double-digit clinical trials on our products. We've always had at least one, if not two, full-time scientists. We have a chief cardiologist. We have a chief medical officer. To me, efficacy is the only North Star, the only one
And for
in this
sustainability
industry.
too, right?
Right. And too many companies in our industry, way too many fall short of that. But with that, the University of Texas most recently, when the NCAA passed the rule, I think it was, like a year and a half ago, that you could actually put corporate logos on the playing surfaces, like on the football field, on the baseball field, on the basketball court. Obviously, the University of Texas have been using our products for 10 years. They won, I don't remember how many national championships. I want to say 25 national championships using our products. But when they opened the thought process of putting a logo on the field, the athletic director at the University of Texas says, I'm not doing that. The University of Texas is the most widely watched, most widely respected D1 athletic program in the country. I'm just not going to make this a money grab. But then he heard our story when I was talking to some of the other people that are in the organization. And I said, look, this is your Gatorade moment. Our products are changing the world. We're changing health around the world. Our products are synonymous with the University of Texas. We were born here. We should be the logo on the football field. We should be the logo on the women's softball field. So that's exactly what happened. So when you tune in to the Ohio State Texas Longhorn game in September, where every football fan in the world will be watching, you'll see human prominently displayed on the field. The first corporate brand in 123 years of playing college football to be on that field.
That's huge.
We're humbled by that. We're honored by that.
That's huge. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. How exciting.
It is. And it's the ultimate, and Lisa, it's the ultimate trust badge for us.
Yeah.
Right. So if you look at the benefit to human, it's, look, we all know that supplements have a trust challenge, and frankly, it's a reputation well earned. I think here it's like saying to a consumer, look, there are no issues with trust here. This is a brand that is revered and used by University of Texas athletes. So we love the combination.
Yeah. I think one thing you also didn't mention is the fact that this was all born out of the research that was done by, 3 people that won the Nobel Prize. And I think just the fact that that happened and, one of them actually came to work for you as well gives your brand so much credibility.
It is great that you brought that up, because that person who started that discovery program at the University of Texas, and we ended up obviously licensing that from them. But he actually later on, he so respected what we were doing to essentially pick up his mantle and take his mantle forward that he did. He joined our science team here at the company. And he was very actively involved, including formulating products. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, but there's not a day that goes by I don't think about him. He actually helped me. I've never really had a mentor, but he really helped me understand and appreciate the value that science truly serves and that's human beings. That's
Yeah.
that's humanity, right? So every single day I think about him.
That's so different from the world you came from, right? In tech, where,
Sure.
the human aspect wasn't as prominent.
No.
And I think you said you were super passionate and worked your butt off during, those tech years. But I think it almost sounds like you now have a deeper purpose and passion for what you're doing. How do you compare your time there to what you're doing today?
I've always sought deeper meaning in just about everything that I've done, but I have to admit, looking back on it, that deeper meaning, when I was in the tech business, and those were the formative years, really, of tech explosion, right? Um, it was just too easy to lose your perspective. You were seeking meaning around financial metrics, right? Versus humanity metrics. And
Mhm.
that's the way that I would probably frame it. Now, I'm a capitalist. I don't make any apologies for that, if that's just the way it is. But I have to say that in those years, I was so focused on building a brand that people would respect forever, building a company that would make an impact forever, than I was on changing
Mhm.
humanity.
Yeah, very different, right? It's a very
Mhm.
different
Yes.
reason to get up for in the morning for sure. I think the one thing that I found interesting in looking at, some of the research around human is, I think before you launched, you put together a few focus groups
Yes.
to kind of just understand what people's perception was in the market. And one of those focus groups was a group of doctors.
Yes.
And I think what I read about it, it was pretty eye opening that so many of them didn't even know what nitric oxide was. And I'd love you to share a little bit about that and how that influenced how you launched eventually.
Well, I've always thought about us as a disruptor, even in the beginning, right? Because before we came, there really were no natural solutions for serious cardiovascular condition states like blood pressure, as an example. So when you think about being a disruptor, it's like people say, "Oh, the sky's the limit." Well, when you're a disruptor, it starts with the sky. Everything you think about starts with the sky, and disruptor's not a thing; it's a mindset.
Hmm.
And the mindset I had from the very first day with this business was this is going to be hard because being a disruptor is messy and it's hard. But to be totally fair, I don't think I had a full appreciation for how hard until I did the focus groups. So we did the initial product, and then we went to focus groups like any 101 marketer would do before they launched a brand into the marketplace. We did physician focus groups and we did consumer focus groups. And do you know, not one single person in consumer or physicians, which absolutely blew my mind, had ever heard of nitric oxide. In fact, the physicians kept saying nitrous oxide, and I'm like, no, 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 no. No,
It's
we're
not the
not
same
we're
thing.
not
Yeah.
launching laughing. We're not launching a laughing gas lozenge, you know. But it was shocking to me. Now, that resulted in a couple things. The first thing it resulted in was we went back to the drawing board and we took another year before we launched, and we went and developed a diagnostic test strip to prove to physicians as well as consumers that, look, we can show you that the body is low in nitric oxide after age 40. The other thing it led to was we launched the company in the medical channel. And we had to go, I knew, because we're talking about cardiovascular here, not greens powders.
Hmm.
I knew we had to go out and get endorsement and education of physicians, because in the case of cardiovascular, what are people going to do? They're going to ask their doctor, "Hey, is this okay if I take this? Is there a problem taking this for blood pressure support or anything?" So we went out and entered the medical channel first and spent a couple of years educating physicians about
And how
this.
did you do that?
We
Now,
went
how
to
open how open were the doctors to learning about it in the first place?
we went to all the trade shows.
Okay.
I mean, it was hard, girl. It was hard. It was hard and it was expensive because there was no revenue coming in, right? But I do think that was kind of a testament to the conviction quotient that we had, to go do this. But I think when we went and would speak to physicians, there actually were many that were receptive. Let me tell you who wasn't receptive were cardiologists.
Interesting.
Excuse
Why
me.
do you think that is?
I don't know. I don't know, but they were the hard sell. And the other thing I learned in that process was, generally speaking, there's always exceptions, but generally speaking, these physicians are not educated on nutrition.
Yeah. I think that's in general, that's a huge problem in the US. I think, I don't know, I would love your opinion on what you think about the healthcare system here. And, I don't think doctors are being trained and are motivated for preventative health, nutrition, supplementation. And I think the healthcare system is failing, in many ways because, I think people are treated for being sick, not for preventing disease.
Change is hard and change is slow. It's called evolution. I like to think about revolution versus evolution, right? Because revolution's called for in this case. It's hard to blame them. I mean, if you are trained in a certain, we're all outcome of our training. We're all an outcome or output of our training. I did hear or read like a week ago or 2 weeks ago that's changing, and it's changing. The U.S. government is encouraging, if not pushing, nutrition to be included in
That's great.
curriculum. Now, some of the more progressive thinkers in the physician community, like let's call them functional doctors. You and I both know that that's been gaining traction. These but it's kind of limited to mostly to concierge type doctors
And
versus
naturopathic
broadly,
doctors.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't have this problem in Asia, and you don't have this problem in Europe. So the reality is it has to change.
Yeah.
It's just got to change. And I am seeing a few promising signs. If you'd have asked me 5 years ago, I said, this system is so broken, I can barely deal with it. But I'm starting to see some cracks of hope.
And I think COVID, was very eye-opening
No
for a lot of
question.
people. And I
Do you
think
think
most
that was the
people,
catalyst? Do you think that was the primary catalyst for the change?
I think it was a big catalyst. I'm not sure if it was the primary catalyst, but I think
Okay.
it's a big catalyst. And I'll take into account what my doctor is saying, but I also want to see what supplements are out there
Sure.
and what science is behind that. So I think AI is enabling people to make better decisions and not to
Okay.
take everything as fact that their doctor is saying. And hopefully the big pharma companies, are not as, another big issue, but it's I think a lot of that is motivated by profit in
Well,
keeping people on drugs.
we're all the CEOs of our own body.
Yeah.
And I think that's the realization or the wake up call. But, if you look at the foods, generally the food system's broken. We know that it's been engineered for profit, not for nutrition.
Yeah. And the soil.
But when you think about sort of the duo, right, of the food system's been engineered for profit. I'm not saying the medical system's been engineered for profit, although you'd have to argue that that's certainly been in the mix. I think the physician training piece is just maybe an outcome of inertia, right? And it's been very slow to change, very, very slow to change. But let's hope, let's both hope together that that's we're in the early stages.
Maybe the future cardiologist will subscribe super beets and maybe a statin.
And I'm starting to hear it.
Really?
I am. I'm
Yeah.
starting to hear it. I'm starting to hear, like, anecdotally, and I'm even starting to see it now in some of the customer reviews that the cardiologist told them to do it. So I'm very much encouraged by it. And then our on-staff cardiologist, Dr. Chris Davis, who is a Duke trained. I mean, he's a rock star. He's very articulate, and that's why we engaged him with us. And he's starting to, I think, get some traction out there within his own community.
What is he
He's
focused
he's
on?
just proliferating the message, that
Mm-hmm.
our
Mm-hmm.
system's broken. We're thinking about this wrong. You've got to, you got to be. He's being disruptive. He's just saying, look, this is all wrong. You have to understand it has nutrition has a major role in the
Yeah,
outcome.
yeah, absolutely. And nitric oxide is not something that only older people need to think about, right?
No.
And so that starts declining. I think in some studies it says even after 20, it starts
Yeah,
declining
in your 30s.
more in your
Yeah, it's
30s. And
declining, and,
so,
and it's different for every person, but it's
hmm
decline. I mean, it's a ski slope by the time you hit 40. Well, one of the narratives we're trying to change, frankly, because America has it wrong. If you think about those 60,000 miles of blood vessels we talked about, right? It's like, wait a second. You say cardiovascular to people today, most people, they think heart. Second thing they think is old. Listen, cardiovascular health for everybody. Your cardiovascular system is the super performance highway of the human body. So whether you're an athlete, a student, you got your first job in the workplace, it doesn't matter. If you want your body to be healthy, how can your body possibly be healthy if the superhighway that's delivering all the oxygen and nutrients isn't?
yeah,
That's the
that
way I
makes
think. That's the way I think about it.
yeah. So tell me about the human products, the main products. I know you have actually added a lot more SKUs
Mm-hmm.
to the range, but what are the main products that you develop?
Well, traditionally, our two primary products have been a nitric oxide lozenge. That's what we launched the company with, primarily through the medical channel. But I think the brand that people would probably know us most by is Super Beats. So we were the market maker for connecting beats to cardiovascular health here in America. We have a lot of people that have copied us now, but we were the market maker. But I think most recently, to your question, we never thought of ourselves as a beet company. You don't need to do double-digit clinical trials if all you're going to do is sell beets. But the Super Beets brand has been good to us, but we want to go beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been over the last 9 months executing on a 2-year strategy that involved a different company ID. We're elevating human in our brand hierarchy. We launched in late fall last year a cholesterol product, a metabolic product. So we want to address all the condition states around cardiovascular health, not just beats and blood pressure. So we're very excited. Things are going well. We've got our work cut out for us because we have to help America understand that there are alternatives that are natural and plant-based that are effective. But I like the trajectory we're on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess you probably have about 20 different products, right? Online right now
We do.
too. Yeah,
We do.
very impressive.
Thank you.
Um, So I want to talk a little bit about research and sustainability for nutraceutical companies. I know you said that you've got a lot of people copying your products with no science backed,
Yes.
and what do you think is going to take to sustain a nutraceutical company today and 5 to 10 years from now?
It's hugely frustrating, to go do all the work and then have people that are able because the business isn't policed as well as it should be. And I think everyone would agree with that. It's
Hmm.
not regulated to the degree that it should be. People are putting these things in their body. They're putting them in their body for health purposes. And so to be making claims around products that are not clinically tested, clinically proven, ingredients that aren't clinically proven, or dosed. That's probably to me, the biggest fallacy. I think that consumers don't understand is that just because this product may have 3 sprinkles of this ingredient in it or 5 sprinkles of beets, it's not going to be sufficient load of that ingredient to align with the clinical data. So our industry needs reform in that regard. And I'm very hopeful, hard to be patient, but very hopeful that over time, the consumer is going to force that to be done because they're going to wake up and understand that all these products are not created equal. So if you have a company, and there are companies that are doing the right thing and do have, clinical research, but they're going to cost more. How could they not cost more if you're making all these investments? I think I shared with you, we have 2 scientists. We've done double-digit clinical trials. We have a chief cardiologist, chief medical officer. Of course, our products are going to be more expensive than someone who's just grinding up beets sourced from China and putting them in a container and then making the same claims we do. So something's got to give. I think you know that. I think anyone that's been in this industry and cares about it realizes that this has got to change. And I do believe the quote unquote nutraceutical company of the future, if you're playing long ball, you don't have a choice. You got to do it the way we do it, not be a copycat. Now, if you're in for a short-term gain, that's a different story. But if you want to play long ball, you're going to have to meet the bar. And I've seen that change in the strategic large CPG companies that have been making acquisitions in the space. That's come almost to a complete crawl. And I think a big reason for that is because they're looking for companies that have through lines of science.
Yeah.
Is the end of the day, if you can't deliver better health outcomes, how many times is the customer going to buy the product?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And I think, with consumers having access to more information and they have access to the research data and the brands that are doing, the right thing, that's going to quickly weed out the companies that don't.
Yes.
So I think
Well,
that's,
you know what I think is maybe the big variable to doing that is AI.
exactly. That's what I mean. Is people are able to say, is this
That's
a
right.
reputable brand? Do they have research?
right.
Do they do testing? So I think that at the end of the day is going to save a lot of the companies that are doing the right thing. So
And in the long run, not just save the companies, but I mean save the industry.
yeah.
In fact, I saw a survey recently. I can't cite it precisely, but it was about trust, and it asked these questions, trust local police department, U.S. government, large pharmaceutical companies, whatever. Nutraceuticals ranked at the bottom.
Oh my God, really?
See,
Wow.
it's not sustainable. It's
Yeah.
just not. Now, I see people in our industry that are responsible, that are trying to bring about change. But unfortunately, if you look at, like, I look at my competitors, right? My number of competitors that are quote unquote copying us with no science has doubled in just the last year. So unfortunately, I think, even though I think if, I take a strategic view, I think the forces in play are eventually going to make this different. To short term, it's not happening yet.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's like you said, you're playing the long game, and I
I
think
am
that's
playing a
what's
long
going to
game.
set up. So,
Yeah.
and that's actually a really great segue into, vision and purpose, because I think you can play the long game as if you're a CEO without vision and purpose. And I think
Sure.
that's one thing that you bring from your time in tech, being able to articulate that very well, be very clear on that. So I'd love you to share what advice you have for new entrepreneurs that are entering this business, and how important clear purpose and vision is in leading a sustainable company.
Your purpose can't be an exit. Anybody that's talking about exit when they're starting a company doesn't know what they're doing. I mean, you do it right, not quick, I like to always say. And you start with a purpose. Employees, investors, those people are attracted to purpose and purpose-driven entities, but it has to be real. It has to be real. It can't be, oh, here's my purpose, but over here on the side, man, I'm just, all I care about is the almighty dollar. Now, that's fine if you want a financial return. I'm not trying to discourage anybody from that. But at the same time, that's not how you build. That's not the through line of building a great company. If you build a great company with super happy customers and super satisfied employees, that E word exit is going to take care of itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
But you can't do
absolutely
it
going to take
without
care of itself.
purpose.
That's right. You can't do it without purpose. What can you name in humanity that has lasted longer than 2 or 3 years, lasted because the people who were doing it were purposeless? You can't name anything.
Absolutely. I think one of my other big passions, I think I shared with you that I also run an executive search firm for specifically the nutraceutical space. And so hiring is always a topic that I love to delve
Sure.
into with CEOs. And how do you hire? How do you hire and make sure that people are a
Okay.
strong culture fit? Because I think today it's so easy to match a resume to a job description with
It
tech,
is.
with AI, with tech, whatever. But you've got to interview for that it factor, the passion and, someone that's aligned with the vision of where you're going. How do you do that in your interview process?
Well, it's missionary over mercenary. I can tell you that, for starters, because you are who you hire. So if you're saying as a leader, I believe, right, that I am who I hire and I'm a purpose-driven organization, and then you hire a mercenary, you've just gone against, what you just said was important. So I think when I look for people, I look for revolutionaries, not evolutionaries. Evolutionaries are very common. They're most common. The people that think evolutionarily, and evolution in my mind is just a slow track to extinction. So if you want to sustain, and I'm very proud, we made the Inc. 5000 10 consecutive years.
That's amazing. That's
I
incredible.
mean, there's this many companies, and we, by the way, just got named to the Bain Insurgency list, of which is only 113 brands out of 63,000 CPG brands. And the company is, 13 years old. So we've been what I call a sustainer. So if you want to be a sustainer, it starts with people and purpose, right? And you've got to build an ecosystem internally that has a mindset of mission, vision, and purpose, and has the ability to sustain and adapt to changes in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I love, hiring revolutionaries. Now, having said that, I interview every single person that comes to work here. Big deal, right? I do view myself as the chief talent officer of the company. I interviewed, by the way, every single person that came to work in my organization at Dell till it was thousands and thousands of people. And I just couldn't do it anymore because, I was spending 2/3 of my day interviewing candidates. But you won't ever talk to an executive, if can be so bold, that's more committed to the notion that you are who you hire. People or CEOs that think that they can hire somebody and then change them, that is just flawed think. You've got to hire people that are not, they're 90% a baked cake. Not saying you can't mentor them and change them and evolve them, but they're 90% a baked cake when you bring them in your house. And they all going to, I've had people slip through the cracks. It's frustrating, but you got to, as a CEO, you got to realize you are the chief talent officer.
Yeah. I wish you can share that with more CEOs, because I feel like not many CEOs realize how important it is to hire for culture fit. And, I think probably you agree that over time, it's become a very intuitive process for you.
Right.
That you can tell almost immediately by someone's body language, their energy level, how they make eye contact, how they talk about their personal passions, are they competitive in their personal life? So it's a very intuitive questioning process to understand if someone's a culture fit. But I'd love you to share if there's anything specific that you look for in culture fit when you interview people.
I look for a revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
want a revolutionary
how do you
mindset.
determine that?
Someone who's not a status quoer. The status quoers will kill you every time. Mm-hmm. They will kill you every time. And they will say the words that they're not. They're like an evolutionary. I'm not hiring evolutionaries. I'm hiring revolutionaries. I want people that are disruptive, have disruptive think. They're also willing to challenge me. Let me tell you what gets CEOs fired in public markets, and I ran 3 different public companies. What gets CEOs fired? How did that guy get fired? I mean, He went to Harvard. He's a smart guy. He's articulate. Well, let me tell you how he got fired. He got fired because he was surrounded by yes men and people who wouldn't disagree with him or her and fight them and tell them the real deal.
Yeah.
So I want people around me that are going to disagree with me. At the end of the day, we're all going to eventually, you're going to win some, I'm going to lose some, and we need to go execute. But I want people who will tell me what they really think. They're revolutionary. They think different. They think in a revolutionary fashion. Those are the people I want first and foremost. The second thing I want is people who I can sense that they're excited and they want to change the world. They care about putting a mark on the board 10 years from now that they were able to be a part of something that literally changed humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. People that want to expand, people that want to be challenged, people that want to grow.
That's
I
right.
think there's so many people that just want to be safe, and that's such a difficult way to live life,
And
I
I'll
think.
just put a fine point on the point about who you hire, right? If you ask CEOs, generally speaking, would you delegate a presentation about your company to a large investor? And the answer is going to be no, every single time. So I would say that who you hire is more important even than that presentation to the investor. And if you're going to think about it in that way, then it probably will change your behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. As a CEO, how do you continue to articulate the vision, as your company continues to grow, with your employees, and keep them, as focused as they were on day one?
Well, I cultivate my disciples, because you get to a certain, when you become a scale up, things do start to change, right? You can't touch every single person every single day. So as a leader, you need to make sure that you're surrounded by disciples and the people that can propagate your message and your mission. I do meet with the employees frequently, and I do meet with every single employee, annually, but you've got to count on the team, right?
Mm.
So when you build your leadership team, it's even more important that those leaders are able to rally, inspire, and articulate what it is you're trying to accomplish in the company. The last thing I do is every single year, our corporate objectives I share with every single employee. It's every single employee. People do their best work when they see the big picture. It's not a boardroom presentation. The primary reason for having corporate objectives is so your employees can execute them.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very serious about that. We revisit that. I do that in my fireside chats every 60 days. I revisit those corporate objectives. How are we doing? I grade us. How are we doing? Red, yellow, green. How are we doing? And it just keeps it in central focus for the team.
I think that's one thing that's probably pretty unique to how you lead in the nutraceutical space. I think there's a lot of CEOs that don't do that, that don't articulate, they don't do the fireside chats and the corporate vision on an annual basis with employees, because I think everyone is running still a small company in their head. But I think
Sure.
your experience coming from big tech and doing it in a structured way like that, I think is super valuable, and maybe worth a podcast on its own to just share sort of how you run things. What was unexpected different for you coming into nutraceuticals versus tech?
The first and foremost, we already covered it. Was
Mhm.
just how this area is not. I would have postulated that this industry would be much more regulated in reality than it is. That was number one. Number two was really just becoming an entrepreneur. I'd always run other people's companies, right? I ran a couple of companies that became global multi-billion-dollar businesses. And, you develop a skill set around that. You develop a regimen around that. You develop a core operating principles as a leader around that. And then suddenly becoming an entrepreneur for the very first time in my mid to late 50s, I'm taking the garbage out, you
Yeah,
know, you
different,
know?
right? Yeah.
And I'm fine with that. I'm not an
Yeah.
ego driven guy, but I got to say, I was teaching myself how to use Google AdWords. It was pretty harsh, in the beginning, because I'm thinking, wow, I've got this CEO thing down pretty good. I've got it down pretty well. And then all of a sudden you talk about being put out of your comfort zone. I mean, that was out of my comfort zone. But I also learned a lot from doing that. It made me a better person and a better leader to start literally from zero.
Yeah. And a lot of, probably for me, every day is first thing on my mind is the business. And at the end of the day, the last thing on my mind is the business. And I think it's a little different, where you're an entrepreneur and whether you're an employee of somebody else. So you probably think about it a lot more than you
I
did.
don't know. I don't know.
No?
I when you go from, I don't know, you're executing on the fastest growth trajectory in human history, right? Business trajectory. Believe me, it was all consuming. I mean,
Yeah,
we
I
worked
can
7
imagine.
days a
Yeah.
week, right? I mean,
Mm.
it was crazy. Wouldn't trade it for anything, but wouldn't do it again. So it, but it's different. You're right. When your name is on the door, right? There's just something about it that makes
And
it
it's your
more
legacy,
carnal.
really. It's
Right.
really your legacy. That's
That's
the
right.
difference, I think. This is your
That's
legacy
right.
and what you bring to humanity. So
There's
pretty
no
amazing.
question. There's no question. And man, isn't it cool that you can leave that mark, right? If you take it seriously, you look at it that way, you do the right things and you deliver,
Mm.
man, you're building your own personal legacy. And I think that's the coolest thing about being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and there's something really amazing about being all in, and I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people don't get the opportunity to experience it or they choose not to experience it. I think we all have the opportunity to go all in on anything in our lives that we choose to go all in, but it takes courage, and it takes true commitment to go all in on something and you know, put your name on the line, so to speak. But that's a great feeling at night too, when you go to sleep and,
Isn't it?
yeah,
Isn't
you
it?
know,
And it's kind of one of those things in life you can't fake, right?
yeah,
If
no,
you can't be a
absolutely.
faker, you're a poser.
Yeah,
If you're an entrepreneur, you got to deliver. I mean, you
yeah,
got to stand. In fact, that's the best way to characterize it. You have to stand and deliver. There's no
exactly.
place to hide. And once when I was thinking about whether to do it or not, I said, man, you know, um, I've kind of got a little bit of a reputation, a little one, for being able to deliver. But if I go do this and I do a face plant, man, that's not going to be good, right? It's sort of like there's a risk, but I said, what the heck, and we went for it. How long have you been an entrepreneur?
8 years.
8
8 years. I
years. And
started my company 8 years.
I'm going to interview you for a minute.
Sure.
So what was the trigger for you in your life that said, okay, I'm doing my own thing. I'm going
Yeah.
to make that move.
I worked for one of the world's largest staffing firms for over 20 years,
Oh my.
Robert Half, and I helped
Okay.
start up their operations in
Oh, I know
Australia.
Robert Half. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I was with them for 20 years,
Wow.
top 5 producer most years,
I
and
believe that.
started their operations in Australia, lived in Singapore, lived in Hawaii, ran their
Okay.
operations there. But I always had this itch to be an entrepreneur, to do it myself and to do it better,
Okay.
And so 8 years ago, I saw an opportunity in the industry and I jumped for it. And it's been super rewarding, but it's like one of those things. It's you have to put your heart into it as well, right? You
Yes.
do. And I think entrepreneurs, a lot of people that are employees use their heads a lot. You can use your mind, but you
Sure.
don't have to always engage your heart. But I
Well
truly
said.
believe that if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to engage your heart on a daily basis and be all in. And I've never felt so much more alive than I do now. And I love what we do because we help nutraceutical companies find the best talent to be successful. So inherently, I feel like we're making the world a healthier and better place with top people. And I love what you say that you are who you hire, because I really believe that's true. And we enable companies to, find the best talent to grow.
You're
Um,
going to love what I'm about to say. And you just like spawned it in my head, right? That's a very cool story, and I love that story. And I love that you had the courage to do that years ago, and it was the Dell experience, because literally, I mean, you just, to go from like less than 100 million in revenue to Fortune 500 in like 4 years, it was, you just think about the growth rate. How many people we were hiring? Like, I remember one year we hired 2,000 salespeople,
Wow.
right, in 1 year, right? So I came to understand during that experience this, what I like to refer to as the talent ratio. And I'm going to put this in my book, right? It's like, talent ratio is a rhetorical ratio. You can't arithmetically calculate it, but it is the ratio between growth and growth of talent. So if you think about it in arithmetic terms, if your growth rate is currently higher and growing at a rate that is higher than your talent is growing,
Yeah.
then you're you're in a deficit position, and your growth rate is going to decline.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to pull your
You
growth
got to
rate
hire
down.
before you need people, right?
Yeah, you have to hire above the curve.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, it's also not just a function of hiring, it's a function of internal development. Like, I like in our company to think, that growth of the firm through growth of the people, growth of the firm through growth of the employees. Not always possible, right? You're going to always have to bring people in from the outside. But if all you're doing is bringing in all your leaders from the outside, every single time you bring in a leader, right, you need to just think about the cultural impact of that, and whether or not that individual is more intent upon imposing their own view of what your company's culture should be versus your view. So I just think it's just a super interesting dynamic that maybe you and I can talk about some other time,
I love
about
that.
that whole notion of talent, right? And what relationship exists between talent and success. Because when you scale a company, when you're a startup, let's face it, I mean, it's driven by the CEO, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to scale up, you're playing a different game. What got you here never gets you there.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you've got to change the way, you think about
And
things.
you got to hire for that as well. Yeah.
You have,
But
well said. You have to
yeah,
hire for that.
mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, a couple of last questions I have for you, Joel. I
Yeah.
think one thing that makes it unique too, what you're doing right now, is you started this business with your wife.
Yes.
And, what is that like? What is that like working with your spouse? Because many people struggle with that. Tell me about that dynamic.
Many struggle with it.
Well, I know a lot of
How
people that
about
have tried working with
all?
their spouses and it hasn't turned out well,
Yeah.
but it sounds like you guys have a great partnership.
No, I was just joking. I mean, it may be at least people tell me it's the hardest thing ever, right? And I see, ugly, ugly situations arise because of it. But we've never had that issue. It is my second wife. We've been married for 31 years, but she's a baller. She was the first female vice president in 3 different tech companies, so she's a lion or a lioness, and we just know our lanes. There are things she does better than me, and there are things I do better than her, and it just naturally works. So we have fun doing it. Now that we're empty nesters, man, it's like we're all about it, almost 24/7. Wait, first thing to say, other than good morning in the morning, we're already on to the business. So it's kind of fun. It's cool.
Yeah. But I think you've got to have a time in your day where you say, okay, we're not talking business anymore. We're just playing and being partners together, right? So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
changing the world, when you know you're changing the world, it kind of never gets old to talk about. It
yeah,
just doesn't.
yeah. It's kind of a fun hobby.
Yeah.
One question I always like to ask CEOs as
Sure.
I wrap up, because we're working in the nutraceutical space, I'd love to hear what you do spiritually, and nutrition workouts,
Okay.
mindset. and other biohacking. What do you do to keep fit? Because you're in incredible shape. I have an idea of how old you are. So I'm not going to share that
Okay.
on the
You're welcome to
podcast, but
share it. I'm not embarrassed by it.
well, you
I'll
can
be
share.
70. I'll be 70 in 3 weeks.
Wow, congratulations! You look amazing.
Thank you. I feel 30.
Yeah.
I don't understand, like my peer group. I feel bad for them. And I think, it may be too, a part of it may be just that I've been taking our products for a decade. My cardiovascular, my endurance, I just feel great. I think I mentioned to you at one point that I've paddled over 5,000 miles. By the way, I'm a long distance endurance paddleboarder. So I'm not one of these slow,
Hmm.
that's not what I'm
Racing.
talking about.
Yeah.
I'm paddling with
Cardiovascular.
intensity like you cycle, right?
Hmm.
I'm paddling for time. I'm on the clock, right? I open ocean paddle. I love it. I love doing it. And it has everything to do, I think, with keeping one healthy. I'm not the person who said it, but there have been some celebrity doctors of late that have said VO2 max is probably the number one marker for health span. Well, I've been an endurance athlete my entire life. I didn't need to hear that more than once because I was going to keep doing endurance sports anyway, but that just made me double down
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
do feel great. Until I look in the mirror, I feel fantastic. And I honestly feel like I'm 30 years old.
And I think it's also that endorphin rush you get from
It
endurance
is. Yeah, it
training.
is.
I think you and I both talked about being long distance runners in our youth.
Yeah.
And that high, you can't replace that,
No.
and also the solitude time. I think for me, and I think we talked about that as well, is having that time on your own to just reflect and almost go into a meditative state is super powerful.
And if you can't like yourself, if you can't like having time to yourself, to
Mhm.
me, that's a signal, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, that's a signal
absolutely.
for a life change. So I love and value that time. And of course, diet, I don't know about you. I'd be interested in your view. I mean, we are what we eat, right? But I believe that for my entire life. I've been careful, always very selective about what I eat, when I eat, and how much I eat. How about you?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No sugar. Eat a lot of red meat. I really believe that high protein is very very good for us. Eat a lot of uh, vegetables, especially beets and greens that are full of nitric oxide and so forth. And yeah, work out every day. I mean, it's like that to me
You
is
know,
my happy place.
Lisa, I am reminded, we did some consumer focus groups recently, and it just always regrounds me in how few people are willing to change their lifestyle, right? For health reasons, right?
Hmm.
And yet at the same time, there's another subset of people that are willing to, they just don't know what to do. So I think our mission's the right one. Our collective mission's the right one. Those of us in the industry that are doing the right thing, you'd be hard pressed to find a more important mission for humanity. But we still have a lot of work to do. We have
Hmm.
a lot of education work to do about nutrition and why nutrition really kind of sets
Yeah, food
your
is
life
medicine.
trajectory. It really
Yeah,
does. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been such a pleasure, Joel. I'd love to have you on again and we can delve into some of these other topics in more depth. Thank you so much for your generosity and time. Can you share where people can get the human products and if anyone wanted to connect with you, how they can best do that?
Of course. So human.com with two N's, HUMANN.com. Love to have you come to our website. And if they want to reach me directly, LinkedIn is the best way.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you again and look forward to having you on the show again.
It was so much fun. I can't believe the time's already gone. Have a great day. You're doing great things.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for tuning into Leading for Wellness. This podcast is powered by Leading for Wellness CEO and Investor Events and Kalan Executive Search. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on your favorite social media platform. And to learn more about our services, visit leadingforwellness.com or colognesearch.com and follow us on Instagram as well.